I moved into this neighborhood thinking it would be quiet, safe, and most importantly, drama-free. You know, white fences, trimmed hedges, kids riding scooters. Instead, I unknowingly signed up for a reality show called HOA Hell, Karen's Kingdom Edition. It all started with a garden gnome. Yes, a cheerful, red-hatted gnome holding a lantern, placed by my walkway because my wife thought it was whimsical. 2 days later, I got a letter in my mailbox on official HOA letterhead, probably printed on Karen's 1997 HP DeskJet. Dear resident, your lawn ornament violates Section 4B of the HOA Aesthetic Guidelines. Remove immediately or face a $100 fine per day. Regards, HOA President Karen Whitmore. I laughed. $100 per day for a gnome? My neighbor across the street had 3 inflatable flamingos that looked like they just escaped a Margaritaville ad, but apparently those were fine. When I politely emailed Karen asking if exceptions were ever made, she replied within 12 minutes. Rules exist for a reason. If we allowed gnomes, what's next? Gargoyles? Neon lights? Chaos. Chaos. From a 12-inch gnome. I decided to keep it up out of sheer principle. If Karen wanted a war over a gnome, fine. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. The gnome drama simmered for about a week before Karen's radar shifted. This time, it wasn't my offensive ornament. It was my Jeep. Now, this wasn't just any Jeep. It was a government-issued black Jeep Wrangler, parked in my driveway while my brother, who works for a federal task force, was staying with us. It had tinted windows, reinforced bumpers, and yes, a giant lock on the rear tire rack. 3 days into its stay, I found another letter taped to my garage. Dear resident, the vehicle in your driveway violates HOA parking standards. Oversized, unapproved vehicles are subject to removal. Remove immediately or face towing at owner's expense. HOA President Karen. I stood in the driveway reading it, dumbfounded. First the gnome, now the Jeep? My neighbor Bob walked over, sipping his coffee. Careful, man. Karen's been on a tear lately. Last month she threatened to fine me because my mailbox flag was the wrong shade of red. I emailed Karen again, explaining this Jeep wasn't mine. It belonged to my brother, who worked for the federal government. Her response? All vehicles are subject to HOA authority. Rules are rules. Spoiler alert, rules were not rules. And Karen was about to find out just how badly she'd overstepped. A few days later, I came home from work and noticed something odd. The Jeep's tire lock was missing. At first, I thought my brother had moved it. Then I saw it. The lock lying on the ground, the chain cut clean through. My stomach dropped. Someone had cut a federal-issued lock. And who do I see waddling down the street with bolt cutters in her hand? You guessed it, Karen. Excuse me, I called out, trying to stay calm. Why did you cut the lock off that Jeep? She huffed. That vehicle violates HOA code. I was well within my authority. Karen, I said, blinking hard. That Jeep belongs to a federal task force. Cutting that lock is the equivalent of tampering with government property. She smirked. Well, maybe the federal task force should learn how to follow HOA rules. I swear, you could hear Bob choking on his coffee 3 houses down. I told her I'd be reporting this, and she shrugged like I'd threatened to report her to the Girl Scouts. That night, my brother laughed when I told him. Oh, she messed up. That wasn't just a lock, that's government equipment. She basically committed a federal crime. And suddenly, I had leverage. The next morning, another envelope showed up in my mailbox. This time it was 3 pages long. Asterisk, dear resident. You are in violation of multiple HOA codes including unauthorized vehicle Jeep, unauthorized lawn ornament gnome, lawn discoloration, slightly patchy grass near mailbox, mailbox misalignment, leaning approximately 1.5 inches. Cumulative fines, 1,200 pesos. Pay within 10 business days. HOA President Karen. Asterisk. My jaw dropped. She was basically speed-running HOA violations like she was playing bingo. I taped the letter to my fridge like a trophy and started documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, videos. Even the neighbor's dog peeing on Karen's rose bushes. I dug into the HOA bylaws and found some juicy stuff. Turns out Karen's house, her precious beige palace, had its own violations. Her backyard shed? Not HOA approved. Her front porch railing? Painted in an unapproved off-white. Her husband's boat? Parked illegally in the driveway for 2 years. Oh, it was on. News of the Jeep incident spread faster than free wine samples at Costco. By Friday, the whole block was buzzing. My neighbor Linda stopped me while watering her hydrangeas. Did Karen really cut a lock off a federal Jeep? Yep, I said, sipping my coffee. Tampered with federal property. Linda gasped so loud I thought she'd swallow her garden hose. By dinner, the cul-de-sac group chat was blowing up. Karen's finally lost it. Who cuts a government lock? Wait until the feds show up. Meanwhile, Karen doubled down. She strutted around with a clipboard, jotting notes like she was auditioning for Neighborhood Cop, HOA edition. At one point, she told a kid to move his skateboard ramp because it violated the safety code. The kid was 6. By now, I had a folder thick enough to make a lawyer salivate. And speaking of lawyers, I called a buddy of mine who's an attorney. After hearing the story, he whistled. Your HOA president cut a federal lock off a government vehicle? That's beyond civil. That's potentially criminal. He drafted a cease and desist letter within 24 hours. I slipped it into Karen's mailbox with a satisfying thunk. It read, "Cease all harassment of the resident at my address. Any further attempts to fine, threaten, or tamper with property will result in legal action. Also, tampering with federal equipment has been reported to the appropriate authorities." The next morning, Karen showed up at my door with a face redder than a stop sign. "You think you can threaten me with lawyers?" she snapped. I calmly sipped my coffee. Not a threat. A promise. For the first time since this circus started, I saw something new in her eyes, fear. 2 weeks later, the monthly HOA board meeting rolled around. Normally, these were sleepy affairs attended by about 4 retirees and a tray of stale cookies. This time, standing room only. Karen sat at the head of the table like a queen awaiting her coronation. She started rattling off my violations in front of everyone. I waited until she was done, then pulled out my binder. "Funny thing, Karen," I said, flipping pages. "While you've been fining me for gnomes and grass patches, you've conveniently ignored your own violations." I listed them one by one. The illegal shed, the unapproved railing, the boat. Gasps filled the room. Bob even shouted, "Checkmate." Then I dropped the final bomb. "Oh, and by the way, Karen cut the lock off a federal Jeep. That's tampering with government property." The room went silent. Karen sputtered. That's not true." But then Linda raised her hand. I saw her with bolt cutters. Game. Over. Karen tried to recover. "This is a smear campaign. You're all against me," she cried, clutching her pearls like a villain in a soap opera. But the room wasn't buying it. One neighbor muttered, "You've been on a power trip for years." Another shouted, "You fine me for wind chimes, Karen." Her voice cracked as she tried to defend herself. I was protecting the neighborhood standards. I leaned back. By committing a federal crime? Bold strategy. The board members exchanged glances. One finally spoke. "Effective immediately, we're voting to remove Karen as HOA president." The vote wasn't even close. Hands shot up like kids volunteering for free pizza. Karen stormed out, yelling, "You'll regret this." But honestly, we didn't. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood felt lighter. No more threatening letters. No more clipboard patrols. People started putting up decorations again. Gnomes, flamingos, even wind chimes in glorious defiance. The board rewrote several of the stricter bylaws, including the ridiculous ornament ban. The fines dropped, the drama vanished, and for the first time, the neighborhood actually felt like a community. As for Karen, rumor has it she tried to start an HOA in another neighborhood, but word spread fast. Nobody wanted her. My brother eventually moved his Jeep, but not before joking, "Should I leave another lockout for her to cut?" Today, that original garden gnome still stands proudly in my yard. His lantern glows at night, a tiny beacon of victory against absurdity. Every time I walk past it, I smirk. Because that gnome isn't just a decoration. It's a monument to the downfall of HOA Karen. Sometimes I think about how differently it could have gone if she'd just let it go. But Karen couldn't resist the power trip, and in the end, her own hypocrisy burned her empire down. So if you ever find yourself dealing with an HOA tyrant, remember, document everything, know your bylaws, and never underestimate the power of a garden gnome. Because sometimes, justice comes in the form of a little red hat and a smug smile. I thought Karen was finally done after the Jeep fiasco, but nope. Like every bad movie villain, she just had to crawl back for one last round. A few weeks later, she showed up at the monthly community meeting with a binder so thick it looked like it contained state secrets. She stood at the front, cleared her throat, and announced she was starting a new neighborhood enforcement council. Translation: HOA 2.0 but with more clipboards. Her big plan? Random house inspections at 7 a.m., mandatory uniform mailbox colors, and, get this, an annual lawn audit. When someone asked what that meant, she said, "I'll personally judge everyone's grass health." The room erupted in laughter. Even the quiet retirees in the back chuckled. Bob, my neighbor, muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Who died and made you lawn god?" Karen's face went crimson. She tried guilt-tripping us about losing neighborhood dignity, but people had had enough. The vote to shut down her council was unanimous, except, of course, for her. As she stormed out, binder clutched to her chest, she hissed, "This neighborhood will regret this day," like we had just exiled her from a throne. Honestly, I half expected thunder to crack outside. But it didn't. Just silence, followed by laughter, and the smell of victory. With Karen finally out of power, our neighborhood felt lighter. People decorated their porches however they wanted. Kids rode scooters without fear of citations, and the block even organized a barbecue. It was the first time in years folks weren't side-eyeing each other over fines. And then there was the gnome. The same little garden gnome Karen once tried to fine into exile became our unofficial mascot. Neighbors started leaving it little accessories, sunglasses, scarves, even a toy sword. Someone joked it had more authority than Karen ever did. The best part? Karma handled the rest. A month later, Karen put her house up for sale, probably hoping to find a new neighborhood to conquer. Except word spread fast. The listing sat for months. Every potential buyer heard whispers of the Jeep incident and the clipboard queen. Nobody wanted in. By the time she finally left, it felt like the final credits rolling on a long, ridiculous sitcom. We toasted goodbye with lemonade, posed for a group photo by the gnome, and promised ourselves, never again would we let one person control our lives with fines and threats. Now, whenever a new neighbor moves in, we tell them the legend of Karen. And we always end it the same way, pointing to the gnome and saying, "That little guy saw it all. Respect the gnome, and you'll do fine here."